Well, hello and welcome to this BC Strategies podcast. I'm joined by a wonderful collection of BC Strategies experts. And just because we haven't done a podcast in a while, just as a reminder, BC Strategies experts are independent analysts, consultants, and thought leaders. And for today, what we thought we would start by chatting about is the inaugural version of Enterprise Connect AI, which was just held last week in Santa Clara. Um, for those that attend Enterprise Connect pretty much every March, that happens at the Gaylord Palms or has for many, many years in Orlando. But this was more of an AI focused event, although arguably Enterprise Connect in March of 2024 was all about AI. But this was, billed as Enterprise Connect AI in Santa Clara, and arguably had a broader AI focus. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of the BC Strategies experts that was there at Enterprise Connect AI. I'm going to turn it over to you, Blair. How was the inaugural event for you, and was it different than kind of the AI discussions that seem to permeate, the March 2024 Enterprise Connect?
Yeah, I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the event. The turnout, some people could say it was more than they expected, some people could say it was less than they expected. But the people who were there were definitely a lot of enterprise customers, and they were very engaged. They were asking really good questions. They were talking to the vendors. They were talking to the analysts. They had good questions. So I was actually very impressed, and I was impressed with the sessions that I attended. Some were pretty technical, some were pretty basic, so it ran the gamut, but very good discussions, good information. So I was really impressed with it. As far as how it differs from the March Enterprise Connect, it definitely drilled down a bit more, I think. I went to one session about agentic AI, which is another topic that we should definitely talk about another time because it's going to be the new buzzword and hot topic for the foreseeable future. But that one was definitely above my head and getting pretty technical. And then other sessions were, kind of basic, why AI in the contact center. So it did run the gamut, which I thought was good. There were a lot of issues discussed, like, what's the cost of AI? How do you budget for it? What's the ROI? There was a lot of discussion about that. No real consensus on what the answers are. And I know we can talk about an article that David Danto wrote recently about, there's no real ROI, and a lot of it is just, people saying, look over there. But so the whole idea about, the real ROI of AI, what it's going to cost, how you're going to budget for it, that's still a big area that we need to drill down into more. But I thought some of the keynotes were good. They talked about their use cases, which was really interesting. And we heard from a variety, like the San Francisco 49ers, they were talking about the fan experience and what how AI and GenAI is being used to improve that. There was someone from healthcare who was talking about how AI is helping in the healthcare vertical. So there were different verticals and use cases, which I thought was really interesting. Someone asked the other day about just what the general use cases are. And I think it's more important to look at the vertical use cases rather than just kind of generic unified communications, because I think we're going to see a lot more use cases in these verticals, again, for healthcare, with diagnostics or with scheduling, with hospitality, improving the guest experience. So I think it's more than just, how AI is going to improve general worker productivity, the way UC does. I think it's really more looking at these verticals and how AI is really going to enhance specific use cases and capabilities there. At least that was what I got out of some of the keynotes. I can go on, but let's turn it over to some other folks.
Great. No, that was a great kind of wrap up. I thought it was, I enjoyed being there. I presented a 90-minute session on AI assistance, and a lot of it was talking about, there's anecdotal evidence, some qualitative, data, and we're starting to get quantitative data to prove that, there's some measurable positive business outcomes, but it's still kind of early days in that regard. Nicholas, I know you were also there in Santa Clara. What was your take?
Yeah, a lot of what I'm going to discuss is going to echo what Blair just shared. I would say it was interesting because before I heard, well, there's AI fatigue, and
Mm.
people were concerned about the event. Will we have enough participants? How would be the engagement? And actually, there's so much going on that I thought it was a very good event. I learned a lot. I think there was a good blend of providers and practitioners. So yeah, there's so much. I mean, on the technology front, we touch a bit agents, and it's definitely something that changes so much about how AI offerings are shaped that we almost could spend an entire session discussing it. The issue of proving value is a big one that we need to collectively tackle. And there are different opinions. Some draw the comparison with email and other collaboration tools where we pass the point of having to prove the ROI per se. But there's a genuine need for enterprises to prove the value of the AI pilots, to better understand the cost aspect of things. So it was a very good to learn a little bit where the industry is and collectively make progress on that front. The last topic is I still see a lot of businesses and companies that are wrestling, building the roadmap. It's easy to pull one use case, show something, like we say after this is where the real issues start with how much will it cost, show me the ROI. And there's also a big expectation from executives, sometimes from boards. What is going to be the strategic impact? What is the end game with AI? And when you start with point use cases, you miss the big picture of the longer term potential value of AI, which is another issue that enterprises needs to address. So these are some of my takeaways. Over to you.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. Like clearly, the ROI is important to prove. Like, if you look at the AI assistants, Microsoft's charging $30 per user per month. I mean, it's really $360 per user per year because you got to make an annual commit. Google Gemini there's a $20 per month and $30 per month package. So clearly there you've got to prove the ROI. Arguably with Zoom AI Companion, and they just made a whole bunch of announcements just this week at Zoomtopia, additional features, but that comes at no additional cost. And similarly, WebEx AI Assistant, no additional cost. So arguably, at least you don't have to make a licensing case. But I think um, the other experts that we have on weren't necessarily at ECAI, but I think let's broaden the discussion because even if you're not paying additionally for AI, there is obviously some concerns around, is it helping or hurting uh, productivity? Is it just something that's fun to say, write this email in a Shakespearean style, and it's just kind of wasting my time? So um, I'm going to go over to Dave Michaels because he always has strong, sometimes wrong, but strong opinions. So I don't know, Dave, how do you see AI? Is it writing all your? Is it going to write your newsletter anytime soon?
Yeah, I just posted. We did the podcast version of the newsletter, and the first one we did was the August newsletter, and we made a podcast out of it using the new Google tool. I was pretty impressed. It picked up. It was interesting. I thought it was all right, and then I decided to post it as a podcast and made the September one the more current one. And it was much shorter. So I think they figured out pretty quickly. Holy cow, this is expensive. We better change this pretty quick. So, and a lot of people, I've shown it to a lot of people, and I listened to this podcast, and the reaction's the same thing. It's a parlor trick, It's like, wow, I can't believe it. It's the same parlor trick we've seen over and over and over, right? That the generative AI can talk very conversationally, sounds like human. The fact that it's not even real people, that it's a bot sounding human, that's not even, interesting anymore. What's interesting is what they're saying. But the it's the same parlor trick, right? Generative AI for 2 years has been doing the same trick over and over and over, and now they're doing it with an audio podcast and two different voices, male and female. But it still gets things wrong, and it's still not that useful. And everybody's so impressed for a few minutes until they actually try to use it, and it's the same thing over and over and over. So I'm really exhausted of all the AI, and I think it's caused a tremendous amount of damage to our enterprise communication sector. I think the whole industry has gone, hook, line, and sinker. That's all they're investing in. That's all they're showing. All their, they just did huge layoffs, industry wide, and all they have. And when you listen to the vendors, they're all saying the exact same thing. It's not as if any vendor in enterprise comms really has any advantage. We're not going to see any vendors. We're not going to see a big change in pecking order in the vendors. It's going to be the exact same. Nothing's changing except for that we've been distracted. We've lost interest in everything else, and it's a shame how much damage it's causing. And not even to get into the energy costs and all this nonsense. And so I think it's a shame. I think that I'm anxious for this fad to get over. I keep on thinking it's going to get over. Then OpenAI just raised all this money. It's like the amount of money that OpenAI just raised suggests that the company has to be at trillions in revenue. I just don't get it. It certainly can't be with the current technology. And so the question is, will it be in the future with better technology? And there's no certainty of that. No certainty at all. So, yeah.
Okay, so obviously somebody who's not impressed with as you say the parlor tricks. I mean, from my perspective, like ahead of Gen AI, the reason I think the vendors are focusing on that is because they were already focusing on everything all the same. It's like we have 3x3 video, now we have 7x7 video, and it's like, I mean, everything was all the same before. Maybe arguably now all their messaging is all the same. I think sometimes if you took off a logo from like a one-page spec sheet, and you play the
Yeah.
game to try to guess who this is from, it would be hard because most of the vendors sound the same. But so Robert, obviously Dave is not a proponent of Gen AI. He thinks it's ruined the communication and collaboration industry, or is on track to do that. I don't know. What are you seeing? What do you think?
Well, there's a few things I agree with Dave on the power consumption, although they're starting to mitigate that. A lot of data centers now have micronuclear reactors to power their data centers, so they will find a solution to that probably. But I also thought about storage. How we occasionally see those kind of hockey stick shaped charts with the terabytes of storage that's increased every year. Now we have these tools, even on the consumer level, that are creating photos, creating meeting notes that probably didn't need to exist before. I know because people send them out to me, and I didn't ask for them. And so we have so much media content that's going to increase our global storage needs in a way that, hasn't, with that hockey stick kind of upward incline started with the digital video and digital audio and the ease of accessing that. It's going to get even worse. But back to the AI itself, I saw a very interesting conversation of all places on nextdoor.com, which, if no one knows, is a local neighborhood social media app. And a medical center here in the Long Beach, California area had moved to AI note taking for their clinicians and for their nurse practitioners and physicians. And there was this very long debate about whether it was good or bad. And it was so interesting to hear from the consumer level the perception of it. And I will say it wasn't generational. You had some very old people who said, now my doctor has time to talk to me instead of spending all this time taking notes. You had other people who said, what about HIPAA? You had physicians and nurse practitioners chiming in saying, well, the tool they're using is HIPAA certified. So I really got to kind of be a fly on the wall of this whole consumer discussion about AI. And it was very mixed. but it also showed how pervasive the knowledge is of the tools. It really has gone beyond from the consumer and the non-IT level. It's gone beyond a few years ago where you had people who were just terrified of it or thought it was going to take their jobs or whatever. I will say that because of this, I've had recent experiences with customer experience that have been deployed very badly. And I sit here and think, do the C-level, do the CIOs actually want to know about this? You know, should I try and contact them on LinkedIn just because I can, you know, even if they don't want me to help them, just so they know how bad it is? My worst fear is that it will be good enough. And just good enough. It will eliminate customer-facing jobs, not because it's better, not because it's doing a better job, because it's good enough and it eliminates some payroll costs. And I think we've seen that happen in a lot of sectors. It can be deployed well, and there's places where it can be very useful. But the CIO level, the CIO position has become a lot more strategic. First, because of remote work, you know, and the need to keep everybody working during the lockdown and pandemic crisis, and now AI. It's compounded how much IT has become a strategic department, and because of that, in the CIO community, there's a lot more focus on high-level strategy, on emotional intelligence, on leadership skills, and really, I think it's a good time for CIOs to still be a little more tactical. I think that people who are making those final decisions need to understand how AI algorithms work, understand the limitations, you know, really scrub through the workflows that their people are proposing to them, not just kind of check off, you know, we eliminated 500 jobs and now everything's automated and customer satisfaction scores have only gone down by 5%, but really kind of have their hands in this and understand what they're doing. So yeah, I think that we are definitely in a hype cycle. I think we should be looking for immediate ROI. And like Blair said, I think that can be found, for example, in the medical profession in verticals in what's called narrow AI, you know, narrow AI enabled by Chat GPT, which makes it more conversational.
No, that's good. Thank you for your kind of perspective. You know, a couple things sprang to mind as you were talking through. Yes, there's no lack of bad implementations of technology. I mean, let's face it, IVR technology, which has been around for decades, still, you know, can be screwed up in many, many ways, it seems. So it's, you know, it is not surprising to me that people will deploy GenAI virtual agents and do a poor job of that. The thing, and I'm going to go over to Martha, you know, kind of our legal perspective. You know, Martha, I saw you being shocked when, you know, they're like, you know, physicians using something like Nuance that Microsoft acquired, you know, to do the patient transcription. But, you know, there's a big focus on the fact that AI occasionally gets things wrong. But here's the thing, humans occasionally get things wrong. Like
Absolutely.
human note takers get things wrong. So, I mean, yes, there needs to be accountability and there needs to be a human in the loop or somebody who's responsible for whether it's, you know, you're writing a drug prescription or a transcription of a meeting. Somebody is responsible for checking that. um, if there's a human in the loop, what other risks does this generative AI pose, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, so let me start by saying almost 5 years ago, Robert and I did a presentation together in California. It was my honor and privilege to be his straight man. But the fact is, the stories that we told, even though the AI was much less sophisticated than it is now, those situations are still real. And in the medical context, it seems to me, um, for speaking of for AI generally, the litigation is just starting. So it may be you know, that these are the glory days of AI. But the fact is, the results of upcoming and not even filed litigation are going to change how AI is deployed, particularly when decisions are made. And I'm not suggesting that the AI tool is making the decisions, but decision makers make decisions based on information that AI gives them that may or may not, the AI yields, that may or may not be correct. I think those days are those big lawsuits are coming. We've certainly had a couple that have started, but to me, in the medical context, I think that's where there's the most acute danger of poor decision making based on yield from an AI tool that didn't get it right for whatever reason. So certainly humans make mistakes. They make them every day. I know I certainly do. But I have common sense and AI has none. And I think at the most basic level, that is the single most important thing to remember. AI has no common sense. It also has no conscience.
Oh,
No, and
Martha,
that's a good point. But
remember all the tort law about people who put their hand under a moving blade of a lawnmower? Not everybody has common sense.
No. Agreed. But AI inherently doesn't have it.
I was going to say, but then, then there's AI, like the Nobel Prize was just awarded to the gentleman with respect to like AlphaFold, who's doing protein folding, that came from Google DeepMind and has unlocked some, abilities that humans didn't have. And maybe that's making mistakes, but, it's like, are we going to be able to, and this is back to right to the beginning to Blair, are we going to be able to identify those use cases where we appropriately apply Gen AI, right? And AI more broadly. And that seems to be, what organizations last week were having success with was not saying AI for everybody, everything, slap some AI on it, but it was finding those specific, whether they're verticalized or narrow AI, as I think you said, Robert, finding those cases where it actually works really well. But
so my only comment on that is, who decides what's appropriate? Who decides
I guess
where the
some humans,
appropriate
right?
use
That's what we
is?
do with all the tools, right? So
Right.
all of this technology, I think somebody's deploying it and deciding if it's, giving an ROI or whatever the other goal is. So Joseph, you've obviously heard a lot of different opinions, some positive, some more on the negative side. I guess from your perspective, and you have a broad perspective and have had kind of a career that's, you've been in many different roles. How are you seeing the opportunities and challenges around, AI as it takes over the UC and collaboration industry?
So I've been doing AI since '87, back when it was neural networks, if you're old enough to remember all that good stuff. But
Right.
the application of AI is always been useful. I mean, we use AI to do all kinds of interesting things in the national security space to predict behaviors and outcomes and things like that. The AI is built on probability, right? The models are basically Bayesian models that try to predict outcomes based on data that they're trained on. They're going to make mistakes because not everything works out the way you think it's going to work out. And, to Martha's point, all of the harms that are created by AI, somebody will own the tort and have to pay for it. I mean, that's
Right.
just, we haven't sorted out who pays, but we will, right? If you use Azure AI or you use, the Google platform or whatever, who is going to ultimately be held responsible? There's no legislation yet, so it'll be the courts, and the courts will decide where that all goes. I do want to point out the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for proteins actually went to Dave Clark at the University of Washington, not in conjunction with the two Google Mind people, just to put our little plug in for Washington.
No, absolutely.
Now, I have gone to 6 international trade shows in the last 5 months. Every single one of them is completely overwhelmed by AI. Absolutely. Everybody is branding something around AI. And to Blair's point or Dave's point, the applications are remarkably trivial. And, but by the same token, I know a lot of CIOs, so do you guys, they all are being told they got to roll something out. And so they're rushing to deploy, to show value. And, I've seen data that says 80 to 90% of these projects are failing. to produce the ROI that led to the investment in that platform. We'll get better. I mean, we were really bad with probability 20 years ago. We were really bad with Six Sigma. Well, we've always been really bad with Six Sigma. But, these things ultimately play out, and then the value gets extracted, and then the rest of it gets tossed. And so I think largely the uncertainty that we're encountering right now is we don't know how the regulators and the courts are going to interpret AI. We don't know where the liability lands. We do know there's a huge theory out there, Martha knows this, that we don't need new laws and regulations because tort law does what it does, contract law does what it does. We don't need new laws. But the other side of that is new laws give us a chance to re-examine this partnership between technology and decision makers. And I think that's going to be super interesting. So, Kevin, I'm more hopeful than perhaps Dave is on where AI is headed. But that all said, there's an enormous amount of grifting going on right now. And so you got to be very careful where you head with that. But I think the contact center is one of the best spots for AI. When I'm out there lecturing on the circuit for this, I walk everybody through how IVR has failed and how AI is going to do a much better job. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, and I think that there's the opportunity if it's correctly applied. I think that is a great place to kind of wrap this up. Obviously, this is a big topic, and I'm sure we're going to come back and drill down into specific, different topics, the regulatory, the risk on subsequent podcasts. But thank you for joining this BC Strategies podcast. And if you have any suggestions on future topics to hear from this illustrious group of very educated, experienced, and opinionated BC Strategies experts, please make a note in the comments and we will consider it for a future podcast. Thank you very much.